A young mother vanishes without a trace in a rural part of Lancashire in the northwest of England.
Where is she? Where has she been left? What has happened to Katie?
Quickly, a prime suspect emerges, but he is determined to lead the investigation astray.
Everything that he says has happened has been proved to not be true, proved to be impossible.
They didn't see this as a straightforward missing person case. They had helicopters up, they had dogs, they had officers, everybody was searching the forest for this shallow grave. The Forest of Bowland is such a picturesque place. It's a real beauty spot. It's the last place that you would expect something so dark and chilling to take place.
The Forest of Bowland, also known as Bowland Fells, is a picturesque area of gritstone fells and valleys in the northeast of Lancashire.
Bowland in Lancashire is a beautiful rural part of the UK. There's over 800 kilometres of an area of outstanding natural beauty in the forest surrounding it. It's one of the most, idyllic places that people would associate with the greener parts of England.
It's really popular for people that are taking the dogs out for walks. There's lots of people that go hiking. A bit of mountain biking goes on up there.
I mean, in an area like that, you wouldn't expect to see a great deal of crime, particularly things like violent crime, because obviously it's an area that is very, very sparsely populated. The most emergency services involvement you'd often see would be things like, mountain rescues of walkers, as opposed to actual crime and, the police being called in to investigate serious incidents particularly.
But on April 22nd, 2022, unspeakable horrors take place in the forest. A local woman has disappeared.
It didn't feel right at all. She was a mum who would have been home for her children, so it was one of those that, from the off, really felt a bit worrying.
The missing woman is identified as 33-year-old Katie Kenyon from Burnley, Lancashire.
Katie Kenyon was a mother of two. She was in her early 30s, and she was somebody that was known for, not just love of her own kids, but of all kids. She loved to be surrounded by children and young people, even to the extent that she tried to set up summer camps for children in her local area. She loved to spend time with her dog, and she was really happy in the outdoors. She was also close to her family. She was, described as a beautiful soul by her family, and somebody that was really outgoing, vivacious and lively, somebody that liked to be around other people and had so much going on for her.
She has had her ups and downs. She's split from her previous partner, but she's got her life back on track. She's got her children. She's got her beloved dog, Indy. She's got two sisters. She's the middle sister. She's got her mum. She normally texts her mum 2 or 3 times a day, so she's a real family person, and she's extremely loved, likeable. Her family even say that, she's a little bit silly in the sense of, she's got a great sense of humour. So she's someone that she's special. She's really special.
Katie's family are the first to sense something is wrong when they receive texts from her phone that seem unusual.
Well, the chain of events that makes Katie Kenyon's family suspicious is that she disappears, they don't hear from her, or they hear from somebody using her phone, but they don't believe to be her. They say that the messages that are coming through, there are things like misspellings or grammatical or punctuation errors that she wouldn't ordinarily make.
They were not in the way that Katie would phrase anything. The grammar was poor, the phraseology was poor. They became concerned that these text messages perhaps weren't actually from Katie at all.
There was one word in particular that was repeatedly spelt wrong, and that word was while. Every time that word was used, and it was used several times, it was spelt without the H. The other glaring problem was that the messages spoke about the dog, Indy, and the dog's name was spelt wrong. Katie wouldn't have spelt her own dog's name wrong.
Katie's on-off boyfriend, 51-year-old Andrew Burfield, also received strange text messages from her that day.
Just give us a ring whenever you can. It doesn't have to be like this. We can sort it out. Whatever help you need, whatever you need from me, I'll or anybody else. I just need to know you're safe and where you're going, that's all.
Katie had been in an on and off relationship with Andrew Burfield. He was a builder, kind of doing odd jobs and so on. They didn't live together, but they were on and off in a relationship. Her relationship with Burfield was very strange. He seemed to really manipulate her.
Burfield would use her mental health against her. He really weaponised her mental health. She was suffering from anxiety. She had made that clear. He would always mention it. He'd be mentioning it in text messages. He'd mention it to her all the time. He'd mention it to her family. Really, we know that with coercive control, anxiety is only going to get worse. And so she's with someone, she's already anxious, and he's gaslighting her. And the more and more he mentions it, the more and more she's going to be getting anxious. And the more and more she might start believing that actually he's here to help me, but I do have all these problems, and maybe I'm not good enough, and maybe I'm not worthy, and maybe I'm not a good enough mum, and maybe I'm not a good enough sister. So he's chipping away and eroding her confidence.
It's reported that Burfield had lent Katie some money. Debt collectors were involved, even though this was a personal arrangement. What was happening, though, was that Burfield was getting debt collectors involved, who would understandably chase Katie for this money, but he would tell Katie not to worry, that it's going to be okay, that he will sort things out. So this really unusual split type of behaviour was going on behind the scenes.
Financially abusing a victim can also ensure that they're further isolating them.
Hey, Babs, I'm at work. Listen, I've just got your message. Can you please ring me? I'm a bit worried. Just ring me. I don't have to do this. I'm not worried about the money. I don't worry about the money. Just ring me, please. Thank you.
He's saying, well, don't worry about the money, Babs. I'll sort it and I'll pay it. Now, it's an accumulating debt. So it's gone from sort of 2,000 to 4,000 to 6,000. And this, for someone who is highly anxious, is going to be absolutely terrifying them. She's worried she's going to lose her home. She's worried she's going to lose everything. And then behind the scenes, he's phoning up the debt collectors saying, can you put more pressure on her? And then he goes back to her again. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about the money. It's fine, it's all going to be okay. I'm going to help you. He's this knight in shining armour. So there's this absolute duplicitous occurrence of what's going on with this money. And it's definitely there to control her.
It soon becomes evident that Katie had been fearful of Burfield in the months leading up to her disappearance.
Things were so bad that Katie at one point had said to her sister, if I disappear, if something happens to me, it will be him. That gives you an indication of just how bad things were in that relationship, but the extent too of the control that Andrew Burfield had over her, that she wasn't able to break free of that.
It seemed to be the case that they'd separated on some level, but Burfield just kept reeling her back in. He just kept telling her, I'm going to get you the help. He had this money that he was holding over her. He had her in the palm of his hand, really, in one way.
Katie's family grow increasingly worried for her well-being and decide to go to Burfield's house to see if he's had contact with her.
Katie's sister and her boyfriend turn up at Burfield's house, and oddly, he's not allowing them entry.
her car is outside Andrew Burfield's home, and her family see this vehicle there, realise that they can't get hold of her. So that's the point at which the alarm is raised with the police.
Evidence is beginning to suggest that Burfield may know more than he's letting on about Katie's disappearance. Her sister calls the police, who pay Burfield a visit. What will he reveal? "33-year-old Katie Kenyon, a mother of two from Burnley, Lancashire, has disappeared, raising concerns among her family after they received suspicious text messages from her phone. Her sister pays a visit to Andrew Burfield, Katie's on-off boyfriend who has been financially manipulating her, and notices her car is parked outside his house. She calls the police, who arrive promptly to investigate.
And then you see this incredible footage of the body-worn video that the officers are wearing when they confront Andrew Burfield about the whereabouts of Katie Kenyon.
These guys outside are concerned about Katie. Do you know where she is?
Yeah, no, I don't. What's happening? I got a text at 2:30
Today?
Yeah, saying I came to your house this morning. I'll show you the
From Katie?
Yeah.
Right.
But when I picked the kids up from school, we came on. The keys are behind the door. So we came into the keys behind the door. So she's in.
You know, he's immediately sparks up a cigarette, seems quite nervous, but what he doesn't seem is emotional or concerned or worried at that time either about where she might be. It doesn't share the same emotions as the family, even though he's with her. And that's quite a poignant thing to look at somebody's body language at that point.
She told me she was on a walk.
She was, sorry?
She told me, she said she dropped the car off this morning and the stuff. Before that message came through, so, what you up to? That's me, what you up to, guys? And that were at 1:30. She put, just out on a walk. You?
Burfield didn't seem worried in the slightest. He was just saying, no, I'm not, this has only just happened. But then, from the messages that he showed the police, it seemed that he'd been concerned about her from 2 o'clock that afternoon. So several hours, he'd been texting her saying, come home. Didn't add up.
Sorry to interrupt. So, are you concerned, Katie?
Yeah.
So, have you reported any of this?
No, because it's only just happened. I've had a sister
But you said the message come at 2:30.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the message come through at 2:45.
Yeah.
And you've replied pretty much straight away. I know, I'm just wondering, because you said it's only just happened, but it's happened at like 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah, but I with the kids, but I came here at 4. To be honest with you, I thought it was just like, I don't know, so like,
So you weren't concerned?
I were, but I were, if you will.
Okay.
Having viewed the body cam footage, it's really clear to me that the police that attended the house knew that something wasn't right. They were questioning Burfield. They were trying to get to the bottom of what happened. They didn't see this as a straightforward missing person case.
It's like mind games, isn't it?
But he's had these messages from just before 2 today, but he's not reported them. He sent messages back saying that what the hell was going on here, it's weird. But he's not reported them missing that kind of, versus his concern.
The day progresses without anyone having seen or heard from Katie, and Burfield denies any knowledge of her whereabouts. Police now ramp up their investigation.
They know that there have been these messages from Katie's phone, so they're then able to investigate those, and they can kind of use cell site analysis to ping where that phone has been, basically. And what they can see from that is that, as well as being at Andrew Burfield's property, the phone has left that area and has been in the area of Gisborne Forest for around 51 minutes earlier that day. So that's something that enables them a very quick way of locating at least where that device has been, if not necessarily where Katie has been. But they're then able to use that triangulated phone data against camera showings from CCTV that prove that Burfield's transit van left that area with Katie in the vehicle. When it returned around an hour later, she's not in the vehicle, but the phone still is.
What they couldn't see was Andrew Burfield's phone moving at all from his home address, as though it's been left there. However, what they could see, Katie's phone, once that phone has then cell-sighted back to Andrew Burfield's home, it goes off.
Which is ringing all sorts of alarm bells. Where is she? Where did he drop her off? Where has she been left? What has happened to Katie?
The SIO then makes a decision to say, right, this person is no longer essentially a person of interest. He is now a suspect. And decisions were made to go back to him, back to Andrew Burfield's house the following day on the 23rd of April.
What they found when they got to the house, though, was that even though it was a really hot day, the log burner was on. It was really hot, and this was unusual.
It was so hot, it was like a furnace inside the house. And an indication there that perhaps things are being burnt on that fire. You know, completely unnecessary to have it, so why has he got that fire burning? A decision was made at that point when they could link that van to Andrew Burfield and say, she was in that van when she left. When your van came back, she was no longer there. So without a body, without any evidence at that stage in his inquiry, the SIO makes a decision that he should be arrested for kidnap.
Where is the last location that you know that she was?
My house.
Right, so you know she was at your house?
Yeah.
Okay, and when was that?
What was it? 9:20 yesterday morning.
Right, okay. So since then you don't know her whereabouts?
I don't know where she's gone from there, no.
Right.
As questioning continues, Burfield begins to reveal more information.
He told the police at one point that he'd lent Katie £6,000 to go and check into a rehab centre or a clinic.
I think she's at a rehab centre.
A rehab centre?
Or some sort of clinic.
Right, okay. And where would that be?
I haven't got a clue.
Right, okay.
And
why do you think that she's at that location?
Because that's not that location, one of them locations, I think.
He has no idea where this rehab clinic or centre is, what its name is, how she would have got there, given that her vehicle is still outside. So he's still then saying, oh, she's gone there, I don't know anything.
I'm going to appeal to you now to let me know if you do know anything at all.
I'll tell you, I'll go and get her myself.
Yeah? Okay, because I'm sure you're aware that her family are really, really concerned.
Yeah.
The last place she's known to be is parked up on your road.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, which is obviously why you're in custody. So it's reasonable for us to think that you may know where she is.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So please, if you do know.
I don't, honestly.
Burfield insists he has nothing to do with Katie's disappearance. His phone is seized and sent for digital analysis. DCI Alan Davies and his team turn their focus to searching the area, including Gisborne Forest.
With such a unique case in this rural area, it becomes a huge inquiry for that senior investigating officer. He's bringing in resources, quite rightly, from all sorts of places. Mountain rescue, he's got dogs, he's got drones and planes, everybody looking, because essentially Gisborne Forest, where that was the last place where they believe she may have been taken to, is a 25-mile radius. It's a huge area, and of course he needs to narrow down. He's not getting any help from Andrew Burfield about where she might be. He has an idea of the direction of the van was going in, but what happens when there's no CCTV, when there's no cell site information, and now he's just faced with the forest. So the next step he decides to do is, well, let's ramp up this media appeal.
The last sighting of Katie Kenyon was around 9:30 on Friday morning, when a woman matching her description was seen getting into a silver transit van with a man in Burnley.
That van had quite a distinctive panel on the side of it. It was a white van with a patched up area on the side.
Someone came forward and said, oh, we saw this van at this time parked up here. So that means that they can narrow down the search now, and they have this part of the forest where they can now look.
The media appeal results in a significant development in the investigation.
Andrew Burfield was a jobbing builder, but he turned up for a job in slightly unusual circumstances, earlier than the occupiers of the home he was working on would have expected. And he engaged them in a slightly odd conversation, asking them when their bins were going to be emptied. That obviously raises some suspicions, and at that point, that bin is then searched, and under the homeowner's refuse, there is some stashed waste, if you like, and in that there are bags within bags, some of which have heavy blood staining, and Katie's flip-flops are in there as well.
Those items were fast-tracked through to check the DNA to find out whether You know, whether that blood was, in fact, Katie's blood, as they suspected, and sadly, that came back positive.
Even when the blood is found in the bottom of that bin with her flip-flops and trainers, obviously that can heighten your fear that something might have happened, but you cannot lose hope until you have proof that she is no longer alive. And the officers will hold that thought process throughout to make sure that there is nothing that stops them from that continued overnight constant working at pace to try and find her alive. In a forest area of that size, there is every possibility that yes, she may be very badly injured, but she may be alive, and there may be that possibility to save her.
Faced with mounting evidence against him, Burfield decides to speak to the police.
He realises now he's in a really difficult predicament, and that even if they haven't got a body at this stage, that there is now evidence that she has come to some kind of injury.
He changed his story quite drastically.
Burfield was about to reveal a story that would shock even the most hardened investigators. On 22nd April 2022, Katie Kenyon, a 33-year-old mother of two, disappeared without a trace in a rural part of Lancashire. Police investigated her on-off boyfriend, 51-year-old Andrew Burfield, after he was seen on CCTV driving Katie in his van, and blood-stained bags were located at his workplace. With the evidence surmounting against him, Burfield decides it is time to tell police his version of the story.
Andrew Burfield has asked to be interviewed. Now, this is quite unusual because when somebody does that, you think, well, they've got something to say, and potentially you hope at that stage, maybe even a confession to say this is what's happened.
I believe that you want to speak to us today, so I'm just going to hand it over to you to tell us what you want to say.
We parked the van up and we went to our site, which we always go to. I say always, but we've been twice.
Right.
And that's where she's done it.
That's where she still is. Okay.
Andrew Burfield then comes up with this story to say, we were in this part of the forest, we went there for a picnic, but during that time there, Katie dared me to throw an axe that I had and knock a Coke can out of her hand. And of course, he's, you know, for everybody listening to that at that particular point would be, well, that's just ridiculous. Why would somebody even ask you to do that? And of course, then when they go in to speak to him further, he says, well, I decided not to do that, so I threw it at a tree, but I accidentally threw it and it hit her. And that was kind of his story. It's an accidental death.
So we don't know what went wrong. You were aiming at the tree and...
No, I can't even say a slip, fell, nothing. I just don't even know what went wrong. It's the stupidest thing. But I'll never do that. It's so stupid.
How close was she from you?
I think.
He then said that he was in the middle of the forest, there was no mobile phone reception to call for help, he was panicking, he didn't think that he was strong enough to lift Katie and take her to get medical assistance or take her anywhere.
There's no help there, you know, there's nothing.
No.
No people. No signal on the phone, they can't carry her. Carry her. Sort of a boyfriend can't carry your own girlfriend.
Andrew Burfield continues to say that having thrown the axe and it's accidentally hit Katie, that he kind of, doesn't say he panicked, but what he does say is he went back to his van and he even considered killing himself at that point. But then he decides in his mind, as he told the officers, that he needs to get his finances straight first. So he then goes back to Katie's body, which he now believes to be dead, and buries her in a shallow grave.
I just don't know what I'm doing, honestly. I don't have covered in blood. I just go to her straight away.
The officers then are thinking, right, okay, then so where is it? Because what was clear is that they couldn't find something that fitted that description at all. This shallow grave, which would be a panic dig and then stuff thrown on top of it. but they couldn't see anything like that in the area where they had been focusing of where that van was last seen.
But they had helicopters up, they had dogs, they had officers searching the forest for this shallow grave, but they couldn't find it.
Andrew Burfield even tells the investigating officers this is exactly where it happened and where she is. Well, the officers are there at the scene and they can't find it. So there's something doesn't add up here. They're very curious as to where is she, because we would normally see something like this and it would be obvious to our search teams, to the dogs, all sorts of things. So obviously it's confusing for them. They don't know where she is and they still haven't found her.
They had all their top search people looking for this grave. I mean, it's horrific to think about. There's a young woman buried in the forest. They're going to use every resource that they've got for that, but it was so well hidden that they just couldn't find it.
They realised that effectively without his help, they're not going to be able to locate the exact site where she is because there is no evidence anywhere of the ground having been disturbed.
It's a few days later when they produce him from prison.
You do not have to say anything.
April 29th, 2022. Police have now been searching for 7 days for Katie Kenyon's body. As a last resort, police take Burfield out of custody and ask him to show them where he buried her.
Now take us to where you buried the body. Help us, because we can't find it.
I've never heard of the police taking somebody out to a gravesite like that before, but Burfield had done such a good job of hiding it that they were left with no other option. They needed to find Katie. They needed to get her a proper burial and the dignity that she deserved. And they also needed to get the evidence that they needed to convict her killer.
When you produce someone from prison, obviously there's an element of security that has to be in place. What you don't want is that prisoner running away for a start. So you have a sufficient number of officers there to produce him from prison in a secure van and take him to the area where you want to take him. But of course, those officers still talk about the fear that, he may become violent or, try and escape. But when you plan something like that, as the SIO did in this case, he's planned it so that that is not going to be a possibility. We have everything in place to make sure he's not going anywhere. The main focus that SIO had was the reason you're here is to tell us where that body is and you're not going anywhere.
Is it okay that side where you sat?
Accompanied by police, Andrew Burfield gives exact directions to the burial site.
Follow this right to the top now to T-junction. About the mile is saying.
As Andrew Burfield is being driven to the forest to identify where he has buried Katie, you can see from the footage above what a beautiful countryside, what an idyllic place this is, and how incredibly unusual that something like this would happen in that area. But also, in matching against this beautiful countryside is this dark and morbid kind of thing that has happened. And it's, for people that live there and people that, consider that a lot of people have gone to retire to those sort of places, this would be a very shocking thing for their community. And then to come out, as he walks out of the van, to identify where a body is, what he has done to this person, where he has buried that body, is a deeply shocking thing.
Sorry, what you saying?
This is where they picnicked.
Okay.
And then he suddenly sits down on the floor, crosses his legs, and it's that indication that this is where she is. Well, what was clear to the officers and the search teams there, some of these, people have done this before, are experts in this kind of thing, was that they couldn't see any makeshift shallow graves anywhere near he was sitting.
He was a builder, so he knew about digging holes, but it had been done with real precision.
Archaeologists subsequently said that the ground had effectively been relayed perfectly with clay, with soil, and then with topsoil.
Absolutely flat and looked untouched, and even the root of one of the trees that was growing there, he'd managed to weave that in without damaging it.
And of course that raised huge suspicions as to, well, that doesn't look like somebody who's panicked. Somebody who's panicked because they've accidentally killed somebody and they've just put them in a shallow grave and driven back really quickly in a matter of half an hour or 50 minutes. You know, so even more suspicions that actually there must be some pre-planning in this.
Police begin to suspect that Katie's murder was premeditated.
In circumstances of this type of inquiry, you start to try and build a timeline that you can see almost down to the minute what is happening. And the officers, in this case, using the CCTV, using telephone calls, text messages, sightings, ANPR, all that kind of thing comes into your timeline to try and work out what's happened. And they also want to put that timeline against what Andrew Burfield is saying. Could he have done what he's done in the time that we can narrow him down to? And essentially where that starts is, at the moment he leaves his house in that van, to the moment that van arrives back, which is 51 minutes. Now they start to work out, well, hang on a minute, let's look at what he says has happened. You know, I get there, I park up, it's a certain amount of distance to walk to where they had a picnic. We then get the picnic out, we then do this thing with the axe where this accident happens. We then go back to my van, I then do this, you know, I think about what I'm gonna do. I then go and dig a grave for an adult body, and then I dig it enough so that I can put the body in and throw stuff back over the top. It didn't fit at all. There's no way. And even the officers in the inquiry team there did almost a rerun to try and go through things that he says has happened, and worked out obviously straight away that it's impossible what he's done.
You have not dug that hole in the 10 minutes that you have said to us. It might have been longer. Right, okay.
I don't know how long we were there, do I? All I'm saying is I don't all that there.
We know how long you're there, and you're not long enough.
But they need to work out now this is premeditated. What has he done in the days preceding when he said he accidentally killed Katie?
This is a predator.
Lancashire police are investigating the kidnapping and suspected murder of 33-year-old mother Katie Kenyon. Her on-off boyfriend, 51-year-old Andrew Burfield, was arrested after blood-stained bags were found at his workplace. Burfield claims he accidentally killed Katie while playing a game involving an axe. 7 days later, after her disappearance, police have released him from custody to show them where he buried her, now suspecting the murder was premeditated.
The thing is, Andrew, you've told us a lot over the last few days, haven't you? And you've told us a lot, certainly today, a lot of information. And a lot of it just does not add up, okay? And ultimately, we don't believe you of what you've said. Okay? But do not believe that this has been an accident. This is about your control and your over Katie, and you're losing the control.
Police examine Burfield's movements in the days leading up to the murder.
One of the first things they see is CCTV the day before, the 21st of April, where he is seen clearly on CCTV borrowing a spade from his dad and putting it in that grey panel van with that distinctive black panel on the side. It helps to form that notion that perhaps he's gone and actually dug something beforehand. That does come to proof because what they do then is they then find CCTV of him the day before going to the forest to the exact same location. And on that particular occasion, this is where they believe he has dug in preparation for killing Katie.
The police told Burfield that they knew that he'd been in the forest the day before. He had to think on his feet, really. And the story that he came up with was that he just had new brakes put on his van and he needed to bed them in. So he'd been up to the forest, testing his brakes, took his dog for a walk the night before.
But the evidence at the crime scene told a different story.
As the crime scene itself is being examined by the forensic teams, they notice two sets of footprints now in this grave that has been identified. One set of footprints has zigzags on, the other one is like a block print. So two sets of footprints don't match what Katie would have been wearing, either flip-flops or her trainers. So, you know, it indicates either two people there, which has to be a hypothesis for the investigating officer initially, or that someone has been there on two different occasions who owns two different pairs of shoes. What you could see on the CCTV footage the day before Katie was killed, when Andrew Burfield was collecting a spade from his father's address, was that he was wearing a certain type of trainer that has the zigzags on it. What they also found later on was that the block print of the print that was next to that grave matched his work boots that he also owned as a builder. So the indication then helped them again have that theory that he's been there before over two different occasions.
The body is taken in for an autopsy, where the extent of Katie's injuries are revealed.
When they took Katie's body off for a post-mortem, it was immediately apparent that he was lying. This was no accident. Katie had 12 different injuries to her head and some defensive injuries as well, where there'd been a struggle.
To the point where she's unrecognisable and the family don't even get to see her body because she's been too mutilated.
There was no way that that was a game gone wrong.
Everything that he says has happened has been proved to not be true, proved to be impossible, proved to be a timeline of which his timeline is completely and utterly opposite to the CCTV, to the phones, to the ANPR, to the witness statements, to what he's done at the scene in this beautiful forest. You know, everything doesn't match up. The evidence tells you one story, Andrew Burfield is telling you a completely different story.
We're looking at a predatorial stalker here, a serial perpetrator, someone with no remorse whatsoever, someone with no empathy, someone who doesn't show any compassion to her children, to her mum, to her sisters, and he weaves this web of deceit remorselessly.
The more the police dig into Andrew Burfield's background, they identify previous girlfriends. And the situation that he had with them, the relationships he had with them were very similar, very controlling, a misogynist, you know, very nasty person.
But what we also then find out is that he's on Tinder, he's on dating sites, he's been to places before where he knows that there is a woman who's living alone in a house and they need a builder. And he asks impertinent questions that ring alarm bells. So, are you living alone? Do you have a partner? Do you have a husband? And he needs this information in order to pick victims, because that's what he's doing. He's picking victims all the time to see how he can manipulate them.
There's evidence of him being a fantasist, a Walter Mitty type of character. He had potentially another relationship in Scotland with trips back and forth to Scotland. He claimed that he had a large property empire.
She even says that you had said that you were going to buy a house and that you've got a portfolio of a number of houses.
That's not relevant, is it? Okay.
The way it's relevant is because it's about you, Andrew, and the fact that you have told lies, you tell lies to women, and you're manipulating these relationships to control, and you fantasise about a life that you would want to have.
That's not a crime, is it?
That's not a crime.
Is it?
Because we're building to the fact that this hasn't just happened on Friday, as you have tried to account for this morning. That what we're saying is that hasn't happened, okay?
Further evidence of his premeditation was discovered during the analysis of his phone.
And what they see there is a series weeks before, 2 or 3 weeks before, where he is typing out responses of text messages premeditated to send to the children and family on his notes in his phone. And that he would then transfer them from notes into text messages on the day that he killed her or the days after. This was his plan. So they could see that all those things were written weeks before in preparation to give a full story as to where Katie might be.
Burfield left voicemails for Katie after he savagely murdered her in an attempt to deflect police attention from him.
You want me to go and get the dog today? No? Kids ringing me. I don't. Just let me know what's happening. I ain't got a clue. Please. I love you.
All these frantic things that he's doing around these messages and how he's supposed to be worried about her. 2 minutes later, they see on his phone, he's texting other women saying what a great day he's having, had a good day at work, and allegedly sitting there watching the football as well on TV. Of course, this builds a picture that this man has premeditated, he's done what he thinks. He now thinks he's done enough to throw everyone off the scent, and now he can relax. But obviously little does he know that actually what he's doing is he's creating more and more evidence for the police to narrow down on him as being the person that killed Katie.
Katie herself even had her concerns about you. She even told her own sister. And basically what she said to her sister was, if I go missing, it will be him, meaning you, who's done it.
On the basis of all of the evidence that they had, the police felt confident enough to charge him with murder.
The murder trial begins at Preston Crown Court in Lancashire on November 14th, 2022.
Interestingly, he wanted a trial, and that automatically makes you think the poor parents, the poor sisters, the poor children, they're going to have to listen to what happened to their loved one in graphic detail.
Burfield was sitting in the dock and his demeanour never changed throughout the whole thing. He had very much a poker face on. He wasn't going to give anything away by his body language, but as the prosecution case came out, point by point, it was almost jaw-dropping. The levels of manipulation that he was using, the control that he was holding over Katie, the gaslighting, it was... You just felt enormous sympathy for her. She must not have known where her head was at. And then, when it came out that he'd planned all of this wasn't an argument that had got out of hand. He'd gone to great lengths to ensure that this happened. With the writing of the text messages, the digging of the grave, it was chilling. On the third day of the trial, we went to court and there was a huge delay. And when Burfield was brought into court, they asked for the charge to be put to him again. And at that point, Burfield pleaded guilty to murder.
Andrew Burfield changed his plea to guilty 3 days into his trial for killing Katie Kenyon, who was from Padiham. Burfield had claimed he killed Katie by accident. Yesterday, he changed his plea to guilty. The judge told the 51-year-old that he should prepare himself, that he might die in jail.
You know, it's often said in murder trials that, murder requires malice aforethought, some form of premeditation, but that premeditation can be formed in an instant before doing an act that is intended to kill or seriously injure somebody. Well, this is premeditation running back weeks and weeks at an absolute minimum and running over a pattern of behaviour where he has been coercive, controlling towards Katie and to others. So this is somebody that was effectively a ticking time bomb. I suppose, if it hadn't been Katie Kenyon, it would have been somebody else. This was clearly a very, very dangerous, very sadistic, very cruel, and entirely lacking in empathy individual, because you look at the way that he tried to even deceive her family, not even giving her family the kind of closure that they would have wanted, either quickly or even trying to maintain this fallacy that she was alive. It's disgusting.
His guilty plea was to save himself a little bit of time in prison. He doesn't care about anyone else.
The court was packed on the day of sentence. Everybody wanted to see justice served to this evil, evil man. Burfield came into the dock and he looked a little bit crestfallen, I suppose, like he had finally been caught. He wasn't getting away with this terrible thing that he planned.
Andrew Burfield is then sentenced to 32 years in prison. And that's a minimum term as well, because of the dangerousness that he poses to the public.
Burfield's life sentence is a relief for Katie's family, but it will not bring her back.
Katie Kenyon was a young woman who still had her whole life ahead of her. She should have been able to watch her children grow up. She should have been able to spend time in the community that she loved, you know, doing the simple pleasures that she seemed to adore, being out with family, being out with children, being out in the outdoors and nature.
Burfield robbed Katie of the chance to live a healthy, long life, to be around the children that she loves so dearly and all of her family. And the wider implications of this for her family and the community cannot be understated. I didn't know Katie, but I got a feeling from her family and her friends and the photographs and everything that we'd seen that she seemed lovely. Burfield was chilling. To think of what she went through, it's absolutely heartbreaking.
Andrew Burfield is a coercive and controlling, manipulative person and is a very dangerous and very evil man. And the indignity that he showed to her in the relationship, you know, carried on with the indignity in the way that he treated her after death as well, you know, leaving her in his hope that she would never be found in a forest.
The Forest of Bowland is such a picturesque place. It's a real beauty spot. It's the last place that you would expect something so dark and chilling to take place.